to the editor last week in the Delaware State News caught our attention. The headline reads, "Tea Party members of Congress are real patriots." It was written by Dave Graham, who's been in the spotlight before as a Republican, then independent candidate for governor in 2008 and 2012, respectively. We invited the Smyrna resident with a background in finance to be our first person this week. Dave, glad to have you here.
Well, thank you for the invite, Shirley.
There's a lot to your letter, but we should start by saying up front, you are not a member of the Tea Party?
No, I'm not a member of the Tea Party. I was a rebel in Delaware politics starting in the year 2000. And the Tea Party didn't come along until after the Affordable Care Act in 2010.
And even though you're not a member, you do think that there are some valid points that they make.
Well, they're on the right track, because what happened with the Tea Party movement is, and this is not original thought, is there's actually very few people involved in a political process in this country, but the Obamacare brought more people into the political process that weren't involved before. And you know, Thomas Jefferson said this country needed a revolution about every 50 years. Well, we can't afford revolutions in this day and age. Everything's too technologically difficult. You can't burn down the barn, you know, to get rid of the fleas, because then you don't have the barn. But the focus of my letter, which was long, and I appreciate the Dover paper that prints everything they don't edit. If I make the point, and I have a sister, Debbie, who's a wonderful editor. So I write it, my sister edits it, and I get to the point. But the point of my letter about the Tea Party was not only were they on target, but they needed to refocus what they're going to do, and that was they need to form a 50-state. It's a Tea Party movement. It's a network. It's not a political party. It is a network. It's Republicans, Democrats, Independents, whatever, that are totally disgusted with the way our country is being run. And you know, the Constitution is a God-inspired document, irregardless of what people say. And our founders knew that they could not anticipate all the problems this country would face. And there's a provision by constitutional amendment to address those things. And I believe the Tea Party needs to refocus its effort and form a 50-state network to pass, and I mentioned two specific things, two constitutional amendments.
Yeah, I want to talk about the amendments. One of them had to do with campaign finance. Let's talk about what those amendments are.
Well, the first one is we need to take the money out of our political system. It's you know, love of money is the root of all evil. Money in itself is not evil, but this recent Supreme Court rulings say, oh, it's constitutional to have all these lobbyists and all these wealthy men and all these corporations and all these PACs jump into our political process. Well, if it's constitutional, we have to make it unconstitutional. And I went in great detail in my Dover article about what I was suggesting, and here's where my CPA background comes into play. Is a CPA, it's not about the numbers, it's about keeping honest people honest, internal control. We have no internal control in this country as far as political contributions.
And then the Second Amendment was kind of targeting lawyers.
Well, it's not targeting lawyers. Look, I work in the Carville State Office building, and I work with deputy attorney generals just about every day. They are the most wonderful, dedicated people we have in state government. If it weren't for them, you know, we have chaos, and we owe a great deal to the third branch of our government. That's what assures our liberty through freedom of press and freedom of speech, which without those two things, you know, I wouldn't be here. They wouldn't be able to print my letters to the editor. You know, and then people complain about my letters sometimes, but I say, hey, I just write them. I don't make them print them. But that being said, my criticism of lawyers is the one, and I'm analytical. I can't help it. Is the ones that are not good at being lawyers get into politics. Because if you're a good lawyer, why would you put your family and children to the public exposure you have to do in being politics? And once they get in there, they don't want to get back to they don't want to leave. They don't want to leave Washington, because I addressed it at the federal level through the U.S. Constitution. And I'll take a breath here and let you ask your next question, because I've been in politics for 40-some years. I can talk on and on like an empty barrel.
Well, look, the headline of your letter was "Tea Party members of Congress are real patriots." Some would argue that they're not patriots because they've threatened a government shutdown, and here we are in a government shutdown.
Well, and the rest of the article, and if I wish I could post it online somewhere so that people could access it and read what I said. Was I'm a student of history, and I'm a member of the Sons of the American Revolution, so I've read it a little bit more. And number one, the Tea Party, the Tea Party, the acronym is taxed enough already. That's what that means, taxed enough already. That was the basis for their objection to Obamacare and the way our government is taxing the people. But in 1773, men dressed as Indians dumped the tea from 3 ships, and they dumped it once. They didn't go back like the Tea Party is doing down in Washington and go dump the tea in the Boston Harbor 42 times. They moved on to the next.
Voting to repeal Obamacare over and over again.
Over and over again. And Senator Coons was right in his floor speech. It is insanity. But I believe he missed the point, and I said that in my letter. They're patriots because they're part of the revolution that needs to occur in this country, not by constitutional convention because it's too complex. But we do have constitutional amendments that can address the issue. And to complete the thought on lawyers before, I'd like to do the Delaware connection on this, is there's a flaw in the Constitution. Lawyers are officers of the court. As officers of the court, they are members of our third branch of government. And and under the separation of powers doctrine, once you become, and this is my suggestion for the constitutional amendment, is once you are admitted to any state bar, you become disqualified from serving in the executive or the judicial branch, or the executive or the legislative branch of our government. Because if you look at the census, we've got a president and a vice president are lawyers. We've got Cruz down there, which I'd like to say to him, son, where is your end game? I think I am older than he is. Son, where's your end game on this? And he's just a lawyer running for president. And then you look in that, the whole republic has been taken over by lawyers. And it's not good. We've seen the effect of that. What is their stock in trade? And I said this in my article. Averments, which are statements they make in court, which may or may not be true. But by the way, colonial Virginia outlawed them, and it ruined the legal profession. and closed room behind doors. And they take those same. They're not businessmen, they're not leaders, and they take that stock in trade, and they take it to Washington. And I knew once that we put 2 lawyers in charge of our United States government, the whole operation would go to pieces.
Look, so you're not an attorney.
Right? No.
If you were in Congress today, how would you vote to end the government shutdown, and would you raise the debt ceiling?
Yeah, we have to pay our bills, and we have to open up the government. And I really hope by writing this letter that someone says, yeah, let's start some constitutional amendments to fix the flaws in our system. And if they're also smart down in Washington, why aren't any of them down there talking about it now? Especially Ted Cruz. He's a lawyer. He should be talking about constitutional amendment. The President of the United States, he's a constitutional lawyer. He should be talking about it. I mean, they're not there to serve us. They're there to serve themselves.
Okay, well, Dave Graham, thank you so much. Our time has run away from us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for being here on First. David Graham, former independent candidate and now op-ed essayist. We thank you for your time.